Okay, so today we're gonna talk about my sort of theory, you could say, my perception, my ideas, rather, on the physical and non physical dimensions. So, dimensions as sort of thought about through the realm of physics and then going beyond that and seeing where that takes us. And kind of just seeing how far can we go, and maybe when you get to a point, does it just restart? So let's start. First of all, we have the first dimension. So this is the only one that I'm sort of unsure about. And I'm sure that it is more obvious than I think. Maybe I've just forgotten it because I feel like this is one of the three that were taught in school. But I feel like I'm not too sure exactly how it relates to the other ones that we'll get to. But for now, this is my idea of it. I'm thinking that if two dimensions is x and y, well, okay, yeah, I guess there would be two possible ideas, and I'm not sure. If two dimensions is x and y, right, like this, then one dimension would just be x. But if it's just a line, then it would have no thickness. And like, what does that even make that? And then the second idea is that it's just the singularity, right? Like just um, I wouldn't say even nothingness, right? I guess the concept of it being one and it being nothing at the same time. Because if it is all one, then there isn't such a thing. Like, we'll get to more of that when we get to the higher dimensions. Higher really is just a way of describing to our physical mind and try to explain that if we can look at a two-dimensional thing, we usually put it on a paper, so we are higher than it and we can observe it. Yet if someone was on that two-dimensional plane, they would not be able to observe our plane, so we call it higher. Is it physically higher? No, because we'll get to why. Because it's not physical in the way that we think of it anymore. Okay, now the second dimension is this x and y, right? Like what you can draw on a paper, although a paper is actually three-dimensional, but the concept of a completely flat reality where there's only up, down, left, right. There is no depth, no girth. Well, that's a word to use. I think most of us uh, understand this one because we're even taught it in school, right? So you can create still a lot, and we as three-dimensional beings, as I said, can observe it fully, right? Does that make sense? Yeah, without being necessarily part of it. So keep that in mind. Um, so now we have the third dimension, which I could kind of do this for, right? It has depth, it has girth, it has what you are seeing on video, except once it's a video, it's kind of two-dimensional again, but it is three-dimensional to me, I guess. And your phone or whatever you're watching this on is three-dimensional. Your physical body is three-dimensional, right? That makes sense to all of us because that's what we experience in what we call our day-to-day lives, right? So we understand that one. Now, the question that we're answering is what would be the fourth one? Now, this is what I think. I think just like you can look down on a blueprint on a piece of paper and you can see all of it at once, yet not necessarily be it. A fourth dimensional being is able to look at all of the third dimension and not necessarily be in it, right? It's almost like you could imagine it as higher, right? As looking down on all that is. But if space is infinite, which is how we think of it, then it is, at that point, I almost imagine it as if it isn't anything in space. It's simply not bound by it anymore. So that's what I would say is the fourth dimension. When a fourth dimensional being would be a being that is not bound by space. So it's almost like you could consider it as it is everything in the now, right? It's everything everywhere right now. That's what I would say is the fourth dimension. You could say that we do get that experience, but I would say that we are actually fifth dimensional. So let's go on. The fifth dimension now, right, would be, since the fourth dimension is everything everywhere concurrently, right? That means the fourth dimension is still bound by time. It's just not bound by space anymore. It completely exceeds it. It completely is above it. So the fifth dimension would be, simply following sort of a step, not bound by time. So that would mean that a fifth dimensional being is or has access to. It is really just an interesting concept that we have, but is or has access to everything everywhere all at once, like the movie. Except not like the movie, because that movie is more about it seems to play it off more like multiverse, alternate realities, like same person, different circumstances, right? It definitely goes beyond that, but that's how it plays off at first. So it's a being, a fifth dimensional being would be a being that is not bound neither by time nor space. And so like that, like a third dimension can access all of the two dimension all at once. A fifth dimensional being is able to access all of time, all of space, all at once, concurrently, just singularly. Now this is where I feel that it caps out. Because then this being, this fifth dimensional being, is, or at least is bound by, like only bound by, infinity. And our concept of infinity is everything, everywhere, all at once. It's everything that we could possibly imagine and think about. So, it is that infinity, and if we try to think of infinity as a concept, it's the singularity. It's the you can see it as a dot. It's the everything, right? Like the absolutely all of existence. A sixth dimensional being would have to be not bound by infinity. They would have to be able to observe infinity and maybe even observe multiple infinities. And I don't even, that's the thing, that becomes the question. Is that just back at dimension one? Is the sixth dimension, well, I guess almost like, is the fifth dimension equal to the first dimension? and so after that it just repeats. I think that's a really interesting concept, because when I was first thinking about this, I was like, couldn't you just keep going? But maybe it's just like how we have observed in from physics to our physical reality of the universe, how the smallest object that we could possibly imagine looks a lot like the largest object that we could possibly imagine, right? We think of well, there's something smaller than an atom, but just for context, we think of an atom as a sphere, and yet we think of the whole observable universe as a sphere, and our Earth is a sphere, and it's simply like, my point is, if you could see the observable universe from far away enough, it would simply look like a dot again. So does it just kind of restart the process? Is there more dots? But does that mean that within every atom or whatever was smaller than that, there is infinity? There is, well, it kind of reminds me of Dr. Seuss, like the concept of the Who. If you watch the movie The Grinch, like it's like on a whole another world of civilization on the smallest thing that you can think of, like the like atomical structure of a snowflake. I don't know how deep it goes. I don't vividly remember, but it's kind of that same concept. So do you think there's a sixth dimension? Do you think that the sixth dimension is just going back to the first or second dimension? Because if you have all of these infinities, right, these singularities, then you start making a line. So then are you back at the first or second dimension, right? So that's really interesting to me. Hope that got you thinking, and let me know what you think, because this isn't a complete answer. It's just some ideas. What is the sixth dimension? What is the first one also? Because I'm not too sure about that. Like, what? I also want to know what is the overall, like, what would be the word? Collective agreement on what the first dimension is, because it really could be both, right? Either a line or a dot. But I want to hear the logic behind each one. Like, why have we collectively agreed that it's either one or the other, or maybe there's something I haven't even thought about. Thank you for your time, and bye-bye.